Ah, the United Kingdom. Land of tea, sarcasm, and a sense of humor so dry it could dehydrate an entire continent. A country where queuing is an art form, complaining politely is a national sport, and asking for chips at a fish and chip shop does not, in any universe, warrant a moral lecture. And yet somehow, every so often, a brave, or perhaps overzealous, American wanders in, armed with a PhD in political correctness, ready to correct centuries of British culture in ways no one asked for. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Picture it. A sunny day in London. The pigeons are plotting something sinister on Trafalgar Square, and tourists are taking selfies as if their phones are going to expire in 2 minutes. Among them, an American tourist spots a red double-decker bus and immediately gasps. Not at the color, not at the iconic presence, but at the fact that a British driver dared to announce the bus route with words that might offend someone, somewhere, someday. And here it begins. The cultural intervention. Americans enforcing political correctness in the UK is a phenomenon that cannot be understated. It is equal parts awkward, confusing, and endlessly entertaining for locals. There's something almost heroic about stepping into a country with centuries of established norms and saying, no, that's not quite right. Let me fix your casual conversation about biscuits. And fix it they will, with all the confidence of someone explaining Wi-Fi to a medieval monk. Consider the classic scenario of dining out. A British family is enjoying a Sunday roast, the gravy is rich, the Yorkshire puddings are crisp, and the conversation is flowing as it does. Enter the American, who immediately notices that the waiter said, "Ladies and gentlemen," pause, cringe, explain, politely yet firmly, that this phrase could exclude non-binary individuals. The British family exchanges glances over their mashed potatoes, unsure whether they should apologize for being born before 1990 or simply continue eating. Meanwhile, the American nods knowingly, certain they have corrected a historic injustice in the span of 10 seconds. Or the pub, the sacred institution of ale, banter, and inexplicable dart tournaments. In Britain, telling a joke that toes the line of political correctness is not only tolerated but expected. In America, it is a public relations crisis waiting to happen. When Americans try to enforce their rules here, hilarity ensues. Imagine someone intervening mid-joke about the Queen's corgis, pausing the pub's collective laughter, and politely explaining why referring to dogs as royal accessories might hurt feelings. The locals simply sip their pint and nod, letting the moment pass, because subtlety and irony are their weapons of choice, and they are undefeated. Sports are another battlefield. Football, soccer, if you must, is practically a religion in the UK, and football chants are notoriously colorful. Americans who attempt to educate fans about politically correct language often leave confused, bewildered, and slightly traumatized. The locals continue chanting with glee, incorporating everything from historical insults to questionable rhymes, and the American quietly retreats, clutching their guidebook to inclusive sports language for tourists. Of course, the cultural clash isn't limited to grand gestures. It's the little things that matter. Ordering a pint at the bar, asking for crisps instead of chips, or complimenting someone's accent can all become grounds for intervention. Americans sometimes attempt to rewrite the rules of British politeness on the spot. They will explain at great length why bloke might not be gender neutral, or why Q could be triggering for someone, somewhere. The British response is usually a polite, bemused smile coupled with a mental note to never speak in public again. Yet, despite the awkwardness, there is something undeniably fascinating about this phenomenon. The Americans are not evil. They are heroic, in a very specific and slightly diluted way. They believe they are bringing fairness, inclusivity, and awareness to a country that has been blissfully ignorant of these concepts for centuries. The British, on the other hand, appreciate the effort while silently acknowledging that their culture operates on entirely different rules. They understand irony, understatement, and the delicate art of looking offended without actually being offended. And sometimes, it escalates to historic landmarks. Imagine an American touring the Tower of London, noticing plaques and exhibits with outdated language, and taking it upon themselves to issue corrections. Meanwhile, the locals are more concerned about whether the ravens have eaten the crown jewels than the semantics of centuries-old signage. History, after all, is complicated, and Americans enforcing political correctness often treat it as a live-action Twitter thread. Yet, for all the awkwardness, there are moments of subtle victories. A British teenager might adopt a new term. A shopkeeper might reconsider phrasing, and somewhere, a pigeon might pause mid-hop in admiration. But mostly, the lesson is simple. Trying to enforce American-style political correctness in the UK is an exercise in futility, comedy, and mild irritation. And that, dear viewer, is why we watch. For every overzealous American correcting pronunciation in the bakery, there is a Brit quietly sipping tea, appreciating the effort, and thinking, "Good luck with that, mate." For every attempt to legislate language, there is a perfectly timed, sarcastic response waiting. And somehow, it all works. The cultural clash becomes a dance, awkward yet fascinating, and endlessly entertaining to those watching from the sidelines. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about Americans or Brits, it's about human nature. About trying, failing, and laughing at our attempts to improve the world in ways we don't fully understand. It's about irony, humor, and the quiet knowledge that no matter how hard you try, some things, like queuing properly, telling a dry joke, or enjoying a pint, simply cannot be fixed. And so, as Americans wander the streets of London, armed with good intentions and an encyclopedic knowledge of politically correct language, the locals will continue to sip tea, deliver sarcasm with the precision of a surgeon, and quietly carry on as if nothing happened. Because this is the United Kingdom, where tradition, humor, and subtle defiance reign supreme, and where attempting to correct centuries of culture is always, without fail, an incredibly British spectacle. Let's not forget the online frontier. Americans enforcing political correctness often migrate to social media, posting blogs, threads, and videos about their British adventures, and the Brits respond with the weapon they know best: humor. Meme culture explodes. Tweets are sent. Reddit threads light up. The American attempt at cultural intervention becomes content fodder for a population that excels at laughing at everything, including itself. Occasionally, the stakes rise. University campuses, international conferences, or even comedy festivals become arenas for political correctness diplomacy. Americans lecture, Brits smirk, and somewhere in the back someone mutters, "Well, that's not how we do it here." The lesson is clear. You can attempt to enforce ideals, but culture is stubborn, humor is powerful, and irony is invincible. And that is why the saga continues. The clash between American idealism and British pragmatism is eternal. Awkward, hilarious, and endlessly fascinating. Of course, it doesn't stop at pubs or museums. Tourist hotspots across the UK are prime grounds for American political correctness interventions. Take the quaint village of Stratford-upon-Avon, birthplace of Shakespeare. Americans stroll through cobblestone streets, spotting offensive words in centuries-old signage, shaking their heads, and whispering to each other about systemic issues in Elizabethan language. Meanwhile, locals stroll past, carrying shopping bags and sipping tea, secretly thinking, "Mate, it's been like that for 400 years. Relax." Or afternoon tea. The delicate balance of scones, clotted cream, and perfectly brewed Earl Grey is sacred. But here comes the American with their phone out, taking notes and explaining why cream first or jam first could be considered culturally insensitive to purists. The British politely smile, stir their tea, and let the chaos roll off like rain on a Union Jack umbrella. By the end of the day, the American has lectured the staff on pronunciation, historical context, and etiquette. The locals? They have just enjoyed tea, as intended, unbothered and smugly victorious. Then there's the arena of comedy, the one place where Brits reign supreme. Imagine the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Americans wander into a comedy show, notebook in hand, ready to educate the performers about microaggressions and inclusive language. The British comedian, armed with razor-sharp wit, notices immediately a joke about the Queen's corgis? Safe. A jibe at celebrity culture? Safe. A subtle dig at overly moralizing tourists? Deadly. Every attempted correction is met with a perfectly timed quip. A sigh here, a sarcastic clap there, and suddenly, the American is part of the punchline. They leave slightly deflated, thinking, "I may have failed, but at least I tried." The audience? They howl with laughter, knowing they have witnessed yet another classic collision of American earnestness and British irreverence.